Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Reading the Game, where we don't just focus on the basic things football podcasts focus on, but also on tactics, mental health, business, and most prominently, intelligence while playing. I'm your host, Ethan Reichert, and today I'm joined by Peter Reichert, who's a former coach of Saskatchewan University and has a UEFA B license. We'll be discussing our experiences playing in 4 different continents. So, Peter, if you could quickly go through your background story and let us know a bit of who you are.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up learned the game in South America. My parents moved to South America when I was 9 years old, and I had no clue what soccer or football was. And so it was in South America that I learned the game. And so that really influenced my career. I moved to New York and played NAI college soccer, so that introduced me to a little bit to the American philosophy of soccer. But along the way, I had some British coaches in there, American coaches, Yugoslavian coaches. I returned to South America, played a little bit after college, and a number of different nationality kind of professional type coaches. And so that's kind of my playing career. I've coached also in Canada, as well as Ecuador, in Morocco, and in Spain.
And obviously, I'm related to him, so I've been in some of the places that he's been in, most of the places he's coached. So I've played in Canada, Morocco, and Spain, and I've had a few like tournaments in like France or playing against a team from Algeria. And so I've had a few bits and pieces of experience playing against teams from other countries. So yeah. So you said you came from Ecuador. So how was that like?
Yeah, that was an eye-opener. It was my first experience. Soon after I got there was España 82, the 82 World Cup in Spain. And we were introduced full tilt to, the full passion and intensity of football, and how, a nation just gets all into it. And the soccer in South America, especially where we're there, is very possession based, very skillful, tight spaces. People play a lot on the streets, little parks, little spaces, anywhere where they can find. And so there's a lot of real tight little play, and that follows through their national game. They're just very skillful all the way around the field in all the positions, very comfortable circulating the ball, little 1-2s, triangulation, very good at keeping the ball.
So like, how did you grow up in this mix as an individual?
Well, things were a lot different back then. So, the technical training that we have now that all kids get, and is getting better all the time, you basically kind of learn on the fly. And I was kind of a late starter. I was a goalkeeper too, but I played a lot on the street, and so I had developed skills also. But you're just trying to imitate and do what those around you do. And so it was very much kind of like what they talk about, learning on the playground, learning on the street. You would do what someone else did, what some older kid showed you how to do. And so it's kind of like a natural learning just by watching and doing. Very little learned from coaching.
And that's something I noticed from playing on the street in Morocco. That was some of the best experiences I've had in football in my life, I'd say, even though it was a bit dangerous at times.
Some of the older guys getting into fights and stuff.
Knives and spears and stuff. So it gets a little crazy sometimes, but I would say the street football was something that you notice a lot in Morocco, just like Ecuador, and how that kind of birthed forward a group of players that are very technically gifted, with pretty insane skills, to be honest.
Yeah, tight spaces, 1v1 skills, especially Morocco. The ability to beat somebody one-on-one is highly prized, and it's almost the one-on-one battles almost more than the game itself, or more than a goal. The ability to to meg somebody, or so. Yeah, so they develop high level skills and very competitive, very intense.
You jumped over the Megs pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah,
Megging someone in Morocco is like winning the World Cup.
that's right. Yeah,
You got people screaming.
Yeah.
And you're getting shamed.
yeah.
So that was, yeah. And so what else did you learn in your latter stages of Ecuador? So maybe not while you were on the street.
Yeah, when I got into the more organized game, mostly post college when I was playing with pro teams, just a very wide variety of coaching influences on Ecuador, and they had influences from Brazil and Argentina and Yugoslavia. Oftentimes, it had a lot to do with who was the national team coach. Ecuador would be the type of country that would import a national team coach, and so for that period of time, they would be importing kind of a school of thought, and that school of thought would influence many coaches in the professional game. One example would be Draskovic, which is a Yugoslavian coach, and he, coached all through South America, but he would bring in a lot of Yugoslavian type ideas, and back in that time, there was the 3-5-2, 5-3-2, the double stopper marking, that was kind of in vogue at the time, and but also a lot of technical work from the Brazilian side, like a lot of ball work, a lot of individual ball work, and even in training, it would be, a lot of times everybody with the ball, and it could be like 40 minutes, everybody with a ball, juggling, ball skills, 1v1 skills, goalkeepers,
With the
everybody.
Brazilian coach?
Yeah, that came from Brazil, and they would just it was just he'd go through a sequence of different juggling combinations or 1v1 moves by yourself, just individually and over and over and over again. And so even at 20, but it was like 21, 22, 23, 24, somewhere in there when I was kind of in that time period, my skills improved tremendously with daily contact with the ball, and so you can improve your touch later in life with that kind of intense training.
Yeah. In a stark contrast to Spain, where many kids are trained to have that touch at a very, very young age. You often see players that know how to play one-touch passes at the age of 8, 9, 7. So what would you say is the biggest thing that you've learned from Spain?
Well, coaching here in Spain, it's been a neat, opportunity, and there's a wide gamut. There's kids here in Spain who can't pass the ball at all.
Yeah.
So you've got the whole pyramid, but as you work your way up this competitive pyramid that they have, you do find as you reach kind of the upper portions of it, the kids that are highly technical at a young age, and they could just have kind of a natural touch. They've been playing, they've been watching the game like since they were little. Their fathers know the game, and they just kind of have this kind of a natural intelligence with how to run, how to play, how to move, and how to receive the ball. Just a very silky smooth touch, and a lot of these countries have these kind of things, kind of natural giftings. So like the skills that you see from a young Moroccan, the athleticism and touch, maybe 1v1 type skills. Here in Spain, kind of the receiving and passing and movement. This stuff they have it at a very young age. They don't necessarily improve at the same, along a spectrum as long. When they're 12 or 13, they have a lot of their technical skills.
Yeah.
And I feel a lot of times we're kind of, as North Americans, we're kind of catching up, and but it feels like a catch-up game when we kind of look head to head.
Yeah, where the focus is more on winning at a younger age, not necessarily development. When you look at getting faster, more physical players, rather than looking at getting technical, more tactically intelligent players, you're often seeing that teams' focus to win is a detriment to the development there. So,
yeah, you had a time in Canada, and I noticed there was very few good teams, and so you're usually blowing out team. If you did gather together the good players in an area, they would blow out most of their opponents. and have a few. This was in Canada, fewer good teams. And when you played your local rivals, a few times a year, the play would be different. It wouldn't be, the focus wouldn't be on keeping the ball, building it from the back, technical skills. It would be on winning. And so, right, it's a little more intense, and it's a little more safety first. And so now we're kind of getting a different side of the conversation, is like kind of how these countries play. And so if you were a kid growing up in Spain, they do value playing from the back. They really do value it. And it's and not just, there's competitive leagues, and so you're playing at a level that is competitive for you, because they have enough, this really wide pyramid that,
for example, like a fourth division team, like in the youth tier, is actually like pretty competitive. And so you often find teams trying to play out through the back constantly, even if teams are planning a press, which every team plans a press because every team plays out of the back. And of course, there's a few exceptions to that. But the influence of Pep Guardiola, his 2011 Barca, Spain winning the World Cup in 2010, the influence of tiki-taka and positional play has really affected the game here. And you can see how players are looking for 1-2s. They're looking to switch the play. They're looking to circulate the ball, keep it safe. Maybe not play the penetrative pass, but to rotate the ball back to the other side. So.
Yeah, you definitely, you nailed it. And in Spain it's funny, because then you all of a sudden run into an Atletico Madrid fan.
Yeah.
And they actually have the opposite view.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, no, play along. Let's get out. Play safe. And they
Simeone is
they have a little more realistic. So we do have these different kind of, within the country, different things. But yes, like on a national level, it's like play out from back. And we've seen Spanish teams get in trouble for overplaying out of the back.
7-1.
Yeah.
6-1.
And now we've seen, Pep at Man City, signing a goalkeeper that can play a ball 80 yards from the back, so that he can threaten you long, so he stretches the field out first. And I noticed when they played Real Madrid last spring in the Champions League, the first 2 or 3 balls went back to Ederson, and they were just like, they were long. It was back to Ederson, and it was like first time balls long. And so there's a Spanish coach that's kind of, yes, he brought about a revolution in Spain, but he's evolving. But Spain, a lot of times, you leave behind this country that's not evolving. It's kind of stuck in this like play.
Yeah.
But for a young player,
it's great.
It's good, because you are learning to play the ball out under pressure.
Whereas in like North America, you have like the pressure lines,
right?
Where you have to play the ball out, and then the kids can start running and pressing and stuff.
Yeah, it's quite different. Yeah.
So what would you say are some of the detriments of like playing in Spain, as great as it is?
Well, I guess it could depend, who you are as a player. So, okay, and you could take someone like yourself, and you've had different coaches here. As a center back, if you have somebody that's like, no, we're going to play out from the back through a press that's coming at us hard, and it's a competitive game, and people are screaming at you from the sidelines, that can be tricky, because there's,
especially when they want you to make one pass to the fullback,
right? And there's
all the teams,
and they're waiting
set
for
it
that.
up to press the fullback.
And so the coach might, he might have watched Guardiola, but he might not necessarily, have, the complete pattern of play. And Guardiola's working on numbers mismatch on different sides of the field. So he's 2 or 3 steps ahead with thought process than the local coach, who just thinks, oh, you just pass it short and that's good. You should be able to play it out of the back. So I suppose that would be a detriment. It's a long season. It's 10 and a half, 11 months.
That can almost be seen as an advantage, though. You're playing.
I'd say it's an advantage. You play week in, week out. I'd say it's an advantage.
Canada and Morocco, the U.S. I don't know how organized it is, but you're not playing every single week.
Yeah,
in Canada, you have like spring and fall season.
It would be an advantage.
In Morocco, there's organized leagues, but they're not as common. And they usually fall apart. So.
Right. Even at the pro youth leagues have a tough time with infrastructure. And so at the top, there's games, but then it's kind of sporadic and they don't have a competitive schedule. Spain is the best.
Organizationally,
Their pyramid and their infrastructure and their fields and what they have their first setup is really some of the best. I do think there's holes in the Spanish coaching.
Yeah.
I don't think they get to everything.
Defensively.
Well, I don't think I think there's areas of the game, like if you would look at probably a German youth coach, they're probably going to break things down a bit more, working on like the weak foot.
Jockeying.
Yeah, they'll take elements like that, and, just even whether it's on an attacking component or defensive component, and they'll break it down a little bit more and become a bit more schooled. Now, your top players in Spain, because they're so gifted and there's so many of them, end up good.
Yeah.
So they're just kind of relying on this pyramid to funnel up really good players. And I'm sure the coaching at the top levels is quite good. But at the bottom levels, it's, they kind of let you play to keep the rondos and keep possession and just, don't do too much correction, and defensively, very little correction in terms of
like what I meant by defensively is when the goal is scored against you, the person whose fault it is the person who gave the ball away, not necessarily if you made a defensive mistake. So even if you were completely left your man open and let the pass through, it wouldn't be your fault because you weren't the one that gave the ball away. So this different idea of, we got to keep the ball, like our possession is our best defense, is a pretty big ideal here.
Right. And I would have been looking at, as a midfielder, was a defensive midfielder anticipating the loss of possession to provide cover in that part of the field because you were going to lose. And so your transition to defense. So your transition to defending, that's a whole theme. And then, marking, how's the marking, and covering. I mean, these are all components that they get very light touch here in Spain.
Yeah. So quickly transition to North America in general. We've already touched over them a little bit, talking about how they're very hard work oriented, physicality wise and speed wise, agility wise. And there are a lot of places that I do know that care about technique and the mental side of the game. I think the mental side of the game is a big part of North American football. They try to focus on it as much as they can, even though if they don't completely understand it all the time. But what do you think of North America?
Canada in particular is very, very spread out and it's very disorganized, and so each city region is kind of doing its own thing. So we don't really have a national identity per se. I think there's some very skillful players across Canada, and you end up, if you can get them all in groups, you can have a very skillful training group.
You often see residency programs are the ones carrying through. So like Whitecaps residency, see a lot of the guys that I played with, they got a lot of trials there, and that's how they're funneling the players. That's where Davies ended up, and that's how he got noticed by Whitecaps and eventually Bayern Munich. So yeah, they focus a lot on this residency program, which is a lot of sacrifice for players that maybe can't afford to do that.
Right, and so that's your top level player. And so if you're so in Canada, the top of the pyramid is actually to leave your city, and so you're not being forged in competition in your local province at the same way. And it's just it's a numbers game to a big degree. It's an organization and a numbers game. It's too spread out, too many teams in the first divisions all over.
Like I think in Alberta alone, there's 3 different league systems in Edmonton alone. So in one city, there's 3 different league systems.
Right, EMSA and ISA and these different, Edmonton minor soccer, and so everybody's competing, and it's not really, it's not organized.
It's for monetary gain and not necessarily for development.
Right. And so until something like that can be, structured properly, and you can get everybody on the same page, playing in the structure, and then limit the teams at the top tier so that there's fewer of them, so that when there's even if it's 5 or 6 like top teams in a city and an age group,
because there are good players there. Like,
yes, there are.
I had a friend who went to the residency program, and he plays on Whitecaps, like as a center back, and he's a pretty solid player. He's really big and very good. They traveled over to Madrid to play a friendly against Real Madrid, and they actually won against Real Madrid 1-0, and I was very shocked.
Is that the same age? Do you know if it was the same age?
Yeah, same age.
Yeah.
And when I talked to him, I was like, oh, surely it can't be their A team. And you go up on the Real Madrid website, and it's their A team that they beat, and you're like, wow, Canada has good players. It's just
so here's an example here, but you look at that. Okay, so here's Vancouver. They have a residency program. They're drawing the best talent from Western Canada.
See that? Yeah, Western Canada. That's
right.
Half of a country they're
right.
they're designated to sign.
Right.
Whereas Toronto FC
and Madrid,
Toronto.
in Madrid, whatever age, that was under 16 or whatever, they might not have won their league. Like,
oh, but no, the Real Madrid teams always win their league.
did they win their league?
They always win their.
Is there in there?
They usually end up with like fewer than 5 goals conceded. They've won like every single game.
Atletico Madrid. I mean, you have other pro teams within these.
Yeah, but Real Madrid is the head of recruit. They recruit the best players.
Okay,
all the
so
players.
they're always winning.
Yeah, they always win.
Okay.
It's not fun.
Okay. I like to see the scores. Yeah. So it's fun. We go to a local field here. I went to drop off my other son, Chase, and see this big commotion going on outside the field. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, there's a bus. And there's like this row of 16 kids sitting on the bench, Real Madrid. And they got cameras. They actually bring their own scaffolding in.
Yeah.
And they're filming the game.
For Real Madrid TV.
Yeah, they're filming the game for Real Madrid TV. Yeah.
Oh, those players were good.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were like, what, 10 years old? And the keeper was like 5'7"?
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's very skillful players. And because they have such a wide pyramid to draw from here, they're getting good players.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap this up, I have a question for you, and it's more for the audience. But should people go out and play in different countries for experience?
I mean, yeah. I mean, that seems kind of obvious. Like what you can gain if you have any kind of opportunity to do. Whether it's an educational program abroad of some kind, or a travel to do a tournament, anything that you can do to expose yourself to other places, other forms, types of the game. It's enriching.
Like to open your eyes to other things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you, Peter, for joining me today. If you guys enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to follow us on Instagram, where we will be able to notify you when an episode comes out. If you're watching on Spotify or YouTube, you can check out our website in the link below, which contains the notes from these episodes and a few extra articles. Make sure you check out the latest one on how to develop touch. Thanks for listening to Reading the Game, and make sure you have a very fantabulous day.